No, it can't be. My God, Anya! The cry tore through Elder Lyra's throat, but it caught, frozen by the dread that rose from her gut. Her exhausted body, already trembling from the impossible fight against the horde of predators surrounding the cabin, collapsed into the snow. Her eyes, previously fixed on the vast white plain where hundreds of yellow eyes gleamed in the darkness, now widened towards the only window in that deadly winter, her granddaughter's bedroom window. There, tearing through the glass with sharp claws, not one, but 3 snow leopards, dark and silent creatures, crept inside. Lyra felt her heart freeze more than the Yakutian winter itself, sealing her granddaughter's fate forever. Or so she thought. Lyra tried to stand, her muscles screaming in protest. The cold seeped into her bones, but the icy grip of dread was far worse. Her breath hitched, a silent plea caught in the frigid air. She could barely crawl, each inch a battle against the exhaustion and despair that consumed her. Her eyes, blurred by frozen tears, couldn't tear away from the broken window, from the darkness that seemed to swallow the faint light of Anya's room. The image of the 3 predators creeping inside replayed in her mind, a premonition of annihilation. Inside the small dwelling, the soft light of an oil lamp cast a warm glow, now torn by the jagged hole in the window. Anya, small and seemingly fragile in her wool nightgown, had been abruptly awakened. Her eyes, which moments before had been sleepy, now widened, clear and bright as frozen lakes, immediately registering the intruders. 3 shadows, elegant and powerful, were already inside the room, their eyes flashing with a predatory intent that would make any adult tremble. But instead of the scream of terror Lyra expected, an unusual silence enveloped Anya. A memory, sharp and vivid, flickered in her mind, the strong hands of her parents, legendary hunters guiding her, their whispers of ancestral techniques, the silent lessons under the vast, starry Yakutian sky. Her childlike vulnerability melted away, replaced by a disturbing calm. Her small body straightened, her bare feet finding purchase on the icy wooden floor. She was no longer the defenseless girl. The wisdom of her ancestors flowed through her. The first leopard, bolder, advanced. Anya moved with a fluidity that defied her age, a blur of motion. She didn't confront force with force, but with redirection. A quick crouch, a precise turn of her body, and the predator stumbled past her, momentarily disoriented. The second followed, trying to flank her, but Anya was already anticipating. She used the first leopard's recovery momentum to create a distraction, a quick, almost imperceptible hand movement that sent a small, heavy object, a carved wooden toy, clattering against the wall, drawing its attention. As the third leopard prepared to leap, Anya met its gaze. There was no fear, only an ancestral wisdom reflected in her eyes. She weaved, she dodged, her movements a silent language of survival. She knew their pressure points, their instincts. With a sudden, swift motion, she used her body weight, surprisingly effective, to guide one leopard into a corner, its paws slipping on the polished floor. Another, momentarily stunned by a well-placed, harmless tap to its flank, recoiled, growling but hesitant. The third, sensing the shift, paused, its predatory certainty wavering. Anya didn't attack. She controlled, she guided, she overcame. In a matter of seconds, the 3 majestic but now confused felines found themselves cornered, their fierce instincts momentarily subdued by the child's unexpected dexterity. They paced restlessly, their growls low, but their eyes no longer held the same murderous intent. Anya remained in the center, breathing evenly, a silent sentinel. Outside, Lyra, with a strength she didn't know she possessed, dragged her trembling body towards the broken window. Her heart hammered against her ribs, bracing for the sight of horror. But what she saw defied all comprehension. Anya, her small granddaughter, was unharmed, her gaze steady, while the 3 formidable leopards were kept at bay, cornered almost. "Are respectful," A gasp escaped Lyra's lips, a sound of pure astonishment. The flickering lamplight illuminated Anya's face, revealing not a victim, but a fierce and calm protector. Lyra's frozen heart began to thaw, replaced by a wave of admiration and a deep, humbling realization. The strength of her people, she had always believed, rested on the shoulders of the elders, in the accumulated wisdom of generations. But there, before her tear-filled eyes, was proof that the true flame of courage, the essence of Yakutian resilience, burned, unexpected and bright, in the next generation. Anya was not just her granddaughter. She was the promise, the hope, the warrior who would ensure that Lyra's lineage, and perhaps the entire village, would not be swept away by the eternal winter. Lyra felt warm tears stream down her wrinkled face, no longer from despair, but from a profound astonishment and an overwhelming gratitude that warmed her from within. The sight of Anya, so small yet so imposing, with the snow leopards cornered under her gaze, rewrote all the certainties of her life. Ancestral wisdom, which she thought was a heavy burden to be carried only by the elders, now blossomed unexpectedly in the youngest of her lineage. A trembling sigh escaped her lips, and she dragged herself a little further, leaning on the broken window frame, watching the surreal scene unfold. Anya, noticing her grandmother's movement, turned slightly. Her eyes, previously focused on containing the predators with an almost wild intensity, softened as they met Lyra's. There was no triumph in her gaze, only a serene determination and a silent understanding that transcended words. The leopards, as if sensing the shift in the environment's dynamic, moved restlessly, their growls low and restrained, but they did not try to escape. They seemed mesmerized, or perhaps simply respectful of the child's unexpected authority. "Anya, my little warrior," Lyra whispered, her voice choked with emotion, almost inaudible. Her heart, which moments before had been frozen with fear and despair, now filled with a strange warmth, a powerful mix of pride and a pang of guilt for having so drastically underestimated her granddaughter. She remembered Anya's parents, legendary hunters, whose secrets and teachings had been passed on to their daughter so discreetly that not even she, the experienced matriarch, had perceived the extent and depth of their legacy. Anya, without a word, extended her hand to her grandmother, a simple gesture, yet laden with comfort and unwavering strength. Lyra felt the small, cold, firm hand squeeze hers, and a current of energy seemed to course through her exhausted body, dissipating some of the pain and weariness. That touch was a visceral reminder that she was not alone, that the fight was not hers alone. The girl was not a helpless victim. She was a formidable ally, an unexpected pillar of resilience. The biting cold of the Yakutian winter still gnawed at the air with relentless ferocity, and the threat of the 1,200 Siberian tigers outside remained, a gigantic, hungry shadow over the village. But Lyra's perception had irrevocably changed. Annihilation, which once seemed a sealed fate, now gave way to a faint but persistent spark of hope. If Anya, at her tender age, could face and subdue 3 snow leopards with such mastery and calm, perhaps there was indeed a chance of survival. Lyra, with renewed effort that seemed to come from a hidden source within her soul, managed to sit up, leaning her back against the cabin's icy wall. Her eyes swept the room, observing the leopards, now visibly calmer, and then fixed on Anya. "Your parents. They taught you well, my flower," she said, a faint, moved smile appearing on her cold, chapped lips. It was more than an affirmation. It was a full acceptance of what had been a secret and a profound recognition of the extraordinary strength Anya carried within her. Anya nodded, her eyes fixed on the predators, as if studying them, understanding every nuance of their behavior. The connection between her and the animals was almost palpable, a silent dance of mutual respect and instinctive understanding. Lyra realized that the girl did not see them merely as threats to be eliminated, but as an integral part of the tiger's delicate and brutal balance. Her parents' lesson was not just about combat and self-defense, but about coexistence, about the art of understanding and surviving in the wild world, where every creature has its role. The elder closed her eyes for an instant, allowing exhaustion to claim her for a brief moment, but the image of Anya, firm and unwavering, propelled her with new energy. The overwhelming responsibility of protecting the village still weighed heavily, but now she was not alone. A new strength, a new perspective was opening up. Her people's resilience was not just a matter of stubborn resistance, but of constant adaptation, of finding strength in unexpected places and generations. Lyra opened her eyes, her gaze sharper and more determined than ever. Despair had been replaced by an iron determination that lifted her. "We need to think, Anya," she said, her voice stronger and clearer. "The tigers, they're still out there, and there are many of them." The girl turned completely to her grandmother, her eyes shining with an intelligence and maturity that went far beyond her years. Together, grandmother and granddaughter, one with the wisdom of years and the experience of a lifetime, the other with the innate dexterity of youth and the legacy of her parents, would face the eternal winter. The small cabin, once a fragile and threatened sanctuary, now became a bastion of hope and courage, guarded by an elder and a warrior in training. The future of the lineage, and perhaps of the entire village, rested on their shoulders. But now, with Anya by her side, Lyra felt it was not an unbearable weight, but a vibrant promise of continuity. Lyra watched Anya, the lamplight dancing on the girl's face, illuminating the determination in her eyes. The image of the leopards, still cornered and submissive, was a silent testament to a strength Lyra had never imagined. The elder felt a lump in her throat, a mix of pride and a pang of remorse for having doubted. She, the matriarch, the guardian of ancestral wisdom, had clung to the idea that strength resided only in the experience of years. But Anya, with her fluid movements and unwavering calm, had proven that wisdom could blossom in unexpected ways, driven by a legacy she hadn't even known her granddaughter possessed. "Anya," Lyra began, her voice still a little hoarse, but with new firmness. "We need a plan. The tigers. They are not like the leopards. There are many of them, and they are relentless." She gestured towards the broken window, from where the icy wind still blew, reminding them of the external threat. Anya's eyes followed the gesture, and a slight tremor ran through her body, not from fear, but from a grim understanding of the challenge's magnitude. The girl approached her grandmother, sitting at her feet, and Lyra felt the warmth of her presence. Anya picked up a piece of charcoal from a small brazier and began to draw on the wooden floor, sketching a map of the cabin, its surroundings, and the paths the tigers might use. Her strokes were firm and precise, revealing a strategic mind Lyra hadn't expected. She pointed to a spot on the map. "Here, grandmother. The snow is deeper. We can use that." Lyra leaned in, observing the drawings with renewed attention. Anya's mind was like a river of clear waters, flowing with practical solutions. "And the leopards?" Lyra asked, glancing at the felines who were now resting, still watched. Anya smiled slightly, a smile that didn't reach her eyes but conveyed surprising confidence. "They are not a threat, grandmother. They understand." The elder felt a shiver. Anya's connection with nature was deeper than anything she had ever seen. It wasn't just training, it was a symbiosis, an innate understanding of the wild spirit. Lyra realized that the girl had not merely subdued the leopards, she had established a kind of truce, a silent communication that transcended the species barrier. "We need to reinforce the cabin," Lyra said, her mind already working on the details. "And we need to alert the others, the tigers." They will come for the entire village. The weight of responsibility for the community returned, but now it was shared. The image of Anya drawing on the floor became a beacon of hope. Anya stood up and went to the window, observing the darkness outside. The snow fell incessantly, covering the world in a white, silent blanket, but Lyra knew that beneath that stillness, the tiger's hunger was a relentless force. "The tigers are clever, grandmother," Anya said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "They will smell the smoke, the warmth of life, but we can trick them." Lyra dragged herself closer to the window, feeling the cold invade her bones. She placed a hand on Anya's shoulder, a gesture of support and trust. "How, my little warrior?" The question was not one of doubt, but of curiosity and a new reverence. Anya turned, her eyes shining in the dim light. "My parents taught me to read the snow, to listen to the wind. There's a path, a diversion we can create, a lure." She pointed to the improvised map on the floor, showing a spot distant from the village, near a ravine. "If we can lead them there, we can buy time. Time for the village to prepare." Lyra felt her heart quicken. It was an audacious, dangerous idea, but it bore the mark of the wild wisdom Anya's parents had passed on to her. The elder looked at her granddaughter, at the small figure who radiated a courage as vast as the tiger itself. The fight would not be easy, but with Anya by her side, Lyra felt that the promise of continuity was stronger than the eternal winter. Hope, once a tenuous thread, now wove itself into a robust fabric of shared determination. They would not merely survive, they would fight, and perhaps, just perhaps, they would find a way to protect everyone. Hope, once a tenuous thread, now wove itself into a robust fabric of shared determination. They would not merely survive, they would fight, and perhaps, just perhaps, they would find a way to protect everyone. Lyra felt the intense cold from the open window, but the flame of courage burning in her chest was stronger than any ice. She squeezed Anya's hand, a gesture that sealed a new alliance, a silent promise that they would face the impossible together. "The lure, Anya," Lyra began, her voice now firmer, though still laden with deep emotion. "How will we do this? The tigers are cunning, and the tiger is vast." Anya, with the seriousness of an experienced strategist, pointed again to the improvised map on the floor. "We need something that attracts them, grandmother, but doesn't lead them directly to the village. Something with the scent of fresh prey, but distant enough that they won't realize the deception until it's too late." Her eyes scanned the room, assessing the few available resources. Lyra nodded, her ancestral mind already processing the possibilities. "We have some dried hair pelts, and the rest of the meat from the last deer we hunted before the harshest winter. The scent is strong, but not enough for 1,200 hungry tigers." She frowned, worry etched into her wrinkles. The task seemed monumental, almost insane, but Anya's determination was contagious. The girl, sensing her grandmother's doubt, touched her arm. "My parents taught me about the wind, grandmother. It can carry the scent far away if we know how. And sound. We can use sound to guide them." She looked at the leopards who were observing the scene with an almost human curiosity. "They will help us somehow. They understand that the danger of the tigers is for everyone." Lyra felt a shiver. Anya's connection with the animals was a mystery, but undeniably real. The elder stood with renewed effort, the pain in her joints diminishing in the face of urgency. "Then let's begin. We need a small sled, something light to carry the lure. And we need more firewood to keep the fire burning and the smoke visible, but controlled." She began to rummage through the cabin's corners, pulling out a simple wooden sled used for transporting light supplies. Anya, with surprising agility, was already gathering the pelts and meat, wrapping them in cloths to concentrate the odor. As they worked, the silence of the Yakutian night was broken only by the whisper of the wind and the crackling of the oil lamp. Outside, the threat was palpable, an invisible but overwhelming presence. Lyra could almost feel the tiger's hunger, an icy wave crashing against the cabin's fragile walls. But inside, the collaboration between grandmother and granddaughter wove a barrier of hope. The leopards, now more relaxed, watched the pair, their golden eyes reflecting the flickering light, like silent sentinels. "We need to be quick, Anya," Lyra said, as she tied the pelts to the sled. Her wrinkled fingers, though slow, were firm. "The sun will rise in a few hours, and with it, the tiger's hunger will be even crueler." Anya nodded, her eyes fixed on the sled, visualizing each step of the plan. The small cabin, once a refuge of despair, now buzzed with the energy of two souls determined to fight. Lyra looked at her granddaughter, the image of a miniature warrior, and knew that no matter what the eternal winter brought, her people's lineage would not surrender without a battle. Lyra looked at her granddaughter, the image of a miniature warrior, and knew that no matter what the eternal winter brought, her people's lineage would not surrender without a battle. The elder felt urgency tighten her chest, time slipping like sand through frozen fingers. The sled, now loaded with pelts and meat, seemed like a small boat of hope in the midst of an ocean of threats. Lyra touched Anya's shoulder, her eyes meeting the girl's. "Who will take the lure, my little one?" The question was laden with a fear she struggled to hide, for she knew the answer would imply an immense, almost suicidal risk. Anya didn't hesitate. Her gaze, previously focused on strategy, now fixed on her grandmother with unwavering determination. "I will, grandmother. I am faster, and I know the ways of the snow as my parents taught me. The wind is in my favor, and the tigers haven't moved en masse yet." The girl's voice was calm, without a trace of fear, but Lyra saw the shadow of a heavy responsibility in her eyes. It was the same shadow she saw in herself, that of protecting her family, the village, the very essence of their existence. A heavy sigh escaped Lyra's lips, forming a mist in the frigid air. Her heart was torn between the dread of sending her granddaughter into danger and the painful understanding that Anya was, in fact, the best choice. Exhaustion still weighed on her limbs, every joint screaming, and her agility could not compare to the child's. "You must be cautious, Anya. Use the shadows, use the wind. Don't show yourself. Only the lure should be seen and smelled by the predators." She squeezed Anya's hand, conveying all her courage and a love that transcended life itself. The three leopards, who until then had been observing in silence, moved restlessly. One of them, the largest, let out a low growl, almost a lament, and rubbed its head against Anya's leg as if offering a silent pact. The girl knelt, stroking the feline's soft fur, a scene of communion Lyra would never have imagined possible. "They will accompany me, grandmother," Anya whispered, standing up. "They understand the necessity, the threat the tigers pose to all of us." Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. Anya's connection was deep, almost mystical, an ancestral bond with the tiger itself. She trusted her granddaughter, but the thought of Anya alone out there, with the leopards as improbable guardians amidst 1,200 tigers, was a heavy burden on her soul. "Go then, my little warrior, and return. The village needs you. I need you." Lyra felt tears freeze on her eyelashes, but kept her voice firm, a pillar of strength for her granddaughter. Anya put on a light, warm reindeer hide coat and soft felt boots that would make no sound in the snow. She took a small pouch with some dried herbs and a piece of bread, a basic survival kit, an echo of her parents' teachings. Her movements were precise, each action calculated with the coolness of an experienced hunter. She carefully opened the cabin door, peering into the darkness that was beginning to lighten on the horizon, revealing the first outlines of the snow-covered trees. The icy air invaded the room, cutting like blades. But Anya seemed immune, her determination warming her from within. The leopards crept out behind her, their silhouettes blending perfectly with the snow and the shadows of the trees, silent ghosts in the dawn. Lyra watched from the broken window, her heart in her throat, beating a frantic rhythm of apprehension and hope. Anya pulled the sled, which glided almost soundlessly over the virgin snow, leaving only a faint trail. She moved with feline grace, quickly disappearing into the dim light of dawn. Lyra saw the three shapes of the leopards following her, an improbable honor guard for the youngest of warriors. The elder stood there motionless, the cold cutting her skin, but her mind was with Anya, every step, every breath of her granddaughter. She prayed to the spirits of the taiga, to the ancestors, asking for protection for her granddaughter, for the hope of her lineage. With each passing moment, the sun rose a little higher, tinting the horizon with pale shades of pink and purple, revealing the icy and dangerous vastness. Lyra knew that visibility would increase, and with it, the danger of the hungry tigers. But she also knew that Anya was the hope, the flame that refused to be extinguished. The village, still asleep under the blanket of snow, depended on that small warrior and her silent courage. Lyra felt an overwhelming pride, mixed with deep anguish, but a new strength bloomed in her heart. The battle for the survival of the lineage and the community had just begun, and Anya was on the front line, carrying the promise of a future. Anya glided through the snow, the light sled laden with the lure following her like a silent shadow. The icy air whipped her face, but the girl seemed oblivious to the biting cold, her sharpened senses catching every whisper of the wind, every distant crackle in the forest. The three snow leopards moved with her, their slender, agile bodies almost invisible against the white blanket, their golden eyes sweeping the darkness that was beginning to yield to the first pale rays of dawn. The ravine, the lure's destination, was still a good distance away, and Anya felt the urgency in every fiber of her being. Lyra, in the cabin, watched the spot where Anya had disappeared. Each passing minute was an eternity of anguish. The cold entering through the broken window was a constant reminder of winter's cruelty, but the fear of the tigers was a much deeper ice in her heart. She tried to calm herself, repeating ancient prayers, asking the spirits of the taiga to guide and protect her granddaughter. The image of Anya, so small yet so determined, was the only thing that kept her from collapsing. The elder felt a tightening in her chest, a premonition she couldn't shake, that something was not going according to plan. Anya, moving with the lightness of a feather, suddenly stopped. Her eyes, previously focused on the path, now fixed on the distance, her ears catching an almost imperceptible sound, a low but unmistakable growl. It wasn't coming from the expected direction, from the vast forest where the main group of tigers should have been. It came from an area closer to the village, from a rocky outcrop they hadn't considered a primary approach point. An advanced group, perhaps a dozen tigers, had separated from the main pack, more cunning and swift, and were moving directly towards the first dwellings, anticipating the lure. The diversion plan, which relied on the slowness of the large group, was at risk. The leopards, sensing the change in Anya's posture, also stopped, their bodies tense, their growls now more audible, but still restrained. The girl looked at the sled with the lure, then towards the direction from which the growls came. There was no time to take the scent to the distant ravine. She needed to act now, to create a more immediate and dangerous distraction. With a quick decision, Anya untied the sled, leaving the pelts and deer meat scattered in the snow. She took a small handful of dried herbs from her pouch, the same ones her parents used to camouflage scent during hunts, and lit them with a spark from her flint, creating dense, aromatic smoke. The leopards, understanding the urgency, moved in a semicircle, positioning themselves between Anya and the direction of the growls. They wouldn't attack, but their imposing presence and stronger growls would be a warning, a visual and auditory barrier. Anya then began to run, not towards the ravine, but towards the rocky outcrop, leaving the lure behind. She wasn't drawing the tigers away, she was placing herself between them and the village, using her agility and knowledge of the terrain to create an invisible barrier, a deadly game of hide-and-seek in the shadows of dawn. Lyra, in the cabin, felt a shiver run down her spine. The silence outside had changed, becoming heavier, more laden with an imminent threat. She couldn't see Anya, but she could feel that the battle had become more personal, more urgent. The turning point had arrived, and the little warrior was facing it head-on, alone, in the icy vastness of Yakutia. Anya ran, her lungs burning in the icy air, but her mind was clear as spring water. The rocky outcrop rose ahead, a labyrinth of stones and snow that her parents had taught her to decipher. The tiger's growls, now closer and more distinct, echoed among the rock formations, deep sounds of hunger and danger. The leopards, like agile shadows, walked beside her, their movements coordinated, their eyes fixed on the hidden threat. Anya felt no fear, she felt intense focus. She knew she couldn't face a dozen tigers alone, but she could trick them, divert them, use every curve of the terrain to her advantage. Her parents had taught her that strength lay not just in direct battle, but in cleverness and a deep understanding of the world around her. Lyra, in the cabin, pressed her wrinkled hands against her chest. The silence of dawn had transformed into a palpable tension, a premonition that sent a chill down her spine, despite the biting wind. She could almost hear the distant growls, a soul-chilling sound, and knew they were not the echoes of the main pack. They were closer, more threatening. Anya was out there, alone, facing what seemed impossible. Lyra's prayers became a desperate murmur, a plea to the spirits of the tiger to envelop her granddaughter in their protection. She dragged herself to the door, wanting to run, to help, but her weak body held her back. A prison of helplessness. Anya reached the base of the rocky outcrop. The tigers were above, their silhouettes beginning to etch themselves against the pale, brightening sky. She saw one of them, a massive male, sniffing the air intensely, its eyes gleaming with cunning intelligence. There was no time for elaborate traps. She needed something quick, something to make them hesitate. Her eyes swept the ground, and she saw a pile of loose stones near a steep slope. An audacious yet simple idea formed in her mind. With a subtle nod, she signaled the leopards to position themselves behind the rocks, ready to create a sudden noise. Lyra, with superhuman effort, managed to stand and stagger to the window, her eyes fixed on the retreating darkness. She couldn't see Anya, but she could feel the battle unfolding. A thunderous sound echoed in the distance, like many stones falling, followed by furious growls and a chorus of howls. Lyra's heart leaped in her chest. What was Anya doing? Her elderly mind struggled to process her granddaughter's audacity. It was a sound of distraction, but it seemed dangerous, very close. Anya had used her surprising strength to push the loose stones, creating a slide that echoed down the slope. The noise, amplified by the leopard's growls, caught the tigers by surprise. They recoiled for an instant, confused, their hunting instinct giving way to caution. Anya didn't wait. She ran to a narrow crevice in the rocks, a shortcut she knew well, and began to climb, her movements precise and silent. She knew the distraction would be brief. The tigers would soon recover from their surprise. Lyra, trembling, pressed her hands against the icy window pane. Silence returned, heavy and laden with expectation. She imagined Anya, small and seemingly fragile, but with a courage that defied her age, facing the predators. A tear streamed down her wrinkled face, not from sadness, but from overwhelming pride. Her granddaughter, the last flame of her lineage, was fighting not just for herself, but for everyone. The elder took a deep breath, feeling a new wave of determination. She had to do her part. She had to alert the village. Anya, at the top of the outcrop, saw the tigers regrouping below. They were furious, but also hesitant. The rock slide had disoriented them, and the presence of the leopards, though not aggressive, was a visual and auditory deterrent. She knew she needed more. Her eyes swept the landscape, and she saw a small campfire, a remnant of an old hunting camp, with some damp firewood. An even riskier idea emerged. She descended quickly, the leopards following her, and lit the firewood with her flint, creating thick, irritating smoke that quickly spread with the wind. The smell of smoke and damp wood was a sign of danger to the tigers, a clear warning of human presence. They growled, confused, and began to move away from the outcrop, following the scent of the smoke away from the village, in the direction where the original lure should have been taken. Lyra saw the smoke rise on the horizon, a dark column against the pale sky. It was a sign, a message from Anya. The elder smiled, a trembling smile but full of hope. Her granddaughter had succeeded. She had diverted the closest tigers. The battle was not won, but Anya had bought precious time for the village to prepare. Lyra turned from the window, her mind already working, planning how to alert the others. The flame of Anya's courage had ignited a new determination in her own heart. The little warrior had proven that the strength of the lineage was infinite, capable of flourishing even in the harshest conditions of Yakutia. Lyra turned from the window, her mind already working, planning how to alert the others. The flame of Anya's courage had ignited a new determination in her own heart. The little warrior had proven that the strength of the lineage was infinite, capable of flourishing even in the harshest conditions of Yakutia. With an effort that made her muscles protest, Lyra staggered out of the room, the sound of her steps echoing in the cabin's silence. She needed to wake the village, share the news and the plan Anya had initiated. The elder carefully opened the main door, the icy wind invading the cabin, but she barely felt it. Her gaze swept over the neighboring dwellings, still plunged in the darkness of dawn. The smoke Anya had created was still visible on the horizon, a beacon of hope and danger. Lyra walked with slow but firm steps to the nearest cabin where her eldest son Boris lived, a strong man, but who now slept a heavy sleep, exhausted by nights of vigil. She knocked on the door with her wrinkled hand, a soft but insistent sound. Boris opened the door, his face creased with sleep, but his eyes widened when he saw his mother there, at this hour, with such a grave expression. "Mother? What happened? The tigers?" His voice was laden with apprehension. Lyra nodded, her voice low and urgent. "An advanced group. Anya diverted them, but the main pack will come. We need to prepare. Now." Boris, without questioning, dressed quickly, his drowsiness replaced by an icy urgency. He knew that if Lyra was so determined, the situation was serious. Together they began to wake the other families, the news spreading like an icy whisper through the air. As the village began to awaken, Anya returned. She glided out of the darkness, the 3 snow leopards following her closely, like silent guardians. The burning in her lungs was intense, and weariness began to weigh on her limbs. But a quiet satisfaction filled her chest. She had done her part, for now. As she approached the cabin, she saw the light on and the movement of the villagers, and a small smile appeared on her lips. Lyra had acted. Lyra, seeing Anya's silhouette emerge from the dim light, ran to her granddaughter, her wrinkled arms enveloping her in a tight embrace. Tears, previously frozen, now streamed warmly down her face. "My little warrior," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "You did it! You bought us time!" Anya returned the embrace, feeling her grandmother's warmth and love, an anchor amidst the chaos. The leopards approached, growling softly, as if also celebrating the girl's return. The village, now awake, looked at Anya with a mix of admiration and relief. The small figure beside the large felines seemed a symbol of hope, a promise that they would not be defeated. Boris approached, his eyes full of respect for his niece. "What do we do now, Mother? The main pack is still out there." Lyra looked at Anya, then at the brightening sky, revealing the vastness of the taiga. "Now we prepare. Anya has given us a reprieve, but the real battle is yet to come. We will use the wisdom of our ancestors and the courage of this new generation." She squeezed Anya's hand, the connection between them stronger than ever, a bond of hope and resilience that would unite the entire village against the eternal winter and the overwhelming threat that approached. Lyra squeezed Anya's hand, the connection between them stronger than ever, a bond of hope and resilience that would unite the entire village against the eternal winter and the overwhelming threat that approached. The embrace slowly broke, but the warmth remained, an invisible shield against the biting cold. Lyra turned to the villagers, her wrinkled eyes sweeping each face, seeing there a mix of fear and a newfound determination. Boris, her son, was already giving orders in a low voice, his imposing figure moving with agility despite his interrupted sleep. "We need to reinforce the entrances," Lyra instructed, her voice hoarse but firm, echoing in the icy air. "Stack firewood against the doors, use extra pelts to cover the windows. Every crack is a doorway to danger." The villagers, previously paralyzed by shock, began to move, driven by the urgency in the matriarch's words. The children, some awakened by the commotion, were kept close to their mothers, their curious and frightened eyes fixed on Anya and the leopards that followed her like silent shadows. Anya, feeling the villagers' gaze, remained silent, observing the activity. Her leopards, once so protective, now seemed calmer, their growls soft, almost imperceptible, a promise of loyalty. She knew the smoke she had created had only bought time. The large pack of 1,200 tigers, hungry and wild, was still out there, and hunger would make them relentless. The little warrior felt the weight of responsibility, but also the strength that came from her grandmother and her parents' teachings. Lyra approached Boris, touching his arm. "We need more fire, son. Large bonfires at strategic points. Fire is our ally against fear and against predators. And prepare the torches, not to fight but to ward them off." Boris nodded, already directing the men to the task. The women, in turn, began to organize food and water inside the cabins, ensuring everyone had the essentials to withstand a prolonged siege. The sun had already risen a little higher, painting the sky a pale orange and revealing the white vastness of the taiga. Anya's smoke still hung in the air, a reminder of the danger that had momentarily receded, but would soon return with full force. Lyra looked at the horizon, her experienced eyes trying to decipher the wind's signs, the forest's whispers. She knew that ancestral wisdom would be crucial now, every detail, every omen. Anya, with her leopards, walked to the edge of the village, her eyes fixed in the direction of the forest. She could feel the presence of the tigers, a dense, hungry energy slowly approaching. There was no dread in her heart, only a calculated coolness, the same her parents had taught her. She crouched, touching the snow, as if she could hear the earth. The leopards lay down beside her, their bodies tense, but confident in the girl. Lyra, observing her granddaughter from afar, felt a mix of pride and a searing pain. Anya was the embodiment of her people's resilience, the flame that refused to be extinguished. But the elder knew that the battle ahead would be the hardest the village had ever faced. She joined the others, helping to stack the pelts, her movements slow but full of purpose. Human connection, the unity of all, was their only hope. The village, once a cluster of isolated cabins, now transformed into a fortress of united hearts, each ready to fight for the survival of their lineage. The eternal winter seemed to tighten its icy embrace, but the flame of hope burned stronger than ever. The eternal winter seemed to tighten its icy embrace, but the flame of hope burned stronger than ever. Lyra watched the villagers, their movements now more coordinated, more urgent. Boris, with his grave voice, distributed tasks, and men and women worked side by side, transforming their humble dwellings into bastions against relentless nature. Firewood was stacked against the doors, creating a solid, improvised barrier. Thick pelts, saved for the coldest days, were used to seal the windows, blocking not only the biting wind, but also the sight of approaching predators. The smell of smoke began to spread through the air. As large bonfires were lit at strategic points in the village, their flames dancing and casting ghostly shadows on the snow. Fire, an ancient ally, was the promise of warmth and a warning to the tigers. Anya, with her leopards beside her, did not directly participate in the physical preparations, but her presence was a catalyst. She walked along the edge of the village, her eyes fixed on the forest, her sharpened senses catching every nuance of the environment. The distant growls, previously sporadic, now became more frequent, a low, menacing chorus that seemed to vibrate in the icy ground itself. She could feel the hunger, the dense, wild energy of the 1,200 tigers, an overwhelming wave moving slowly but with relentless determination. Her leopards, sensing the change in the atmosphere, were more alert. Their bodies tense, but their golden eyes conveyed a surprising calm, a reflection of Anya's own serenity. Lyra, exhausted but with a new strength blooming in her chest, helped tie the pelts to her cabin windows. Each tightened knot was an act of faith, a silent prayer for the protection of her family and her people. She looked at Anya, at the small figure who, despite her age, carried the weight of everyone's hope. A tear streamed down her wrinkled face, not from sadness, but from a pride that warmed her soul more than any bonfire. The girl was living proof that the lineage would not be broken, that the courage of her ancestors flowed strong in the new generation. The children, kept inside the cabins, peeked through the cracks, their small, frightened faces reflecting the gravity of the situation. The mother's whispers, the low prayers, all contributed to the atmosphere of tension, but there was no despair, only a silent determination. The village, united by a common purpose, transformed fear into action, vulnerability into resilience. Boris, seeing the work almost completed, approached Lyra, his face serious. "The bonfires are lit, Mother. The doors and windows are reinforced, but they will come. We can feel it." Lyra nodded, her eyes fixed on the horizon, where Anya's smoke still mingled with the pale sky. "Yes, son, they will come. But we will be ready. We will use every ounce of our wisdom, every bit of our courage, and Anya has shown us that hope is not just in the past, but in the future she represents." She squeezed Boris's hand, a gesture of unity and strength. The sound of growls became clearer, closer. The ground seemed to tremble slightly. The vast taiga, once silent, now pulsed with wild life, with the hunger of 1,200 predators. The villagers retreated to their cabins, torches lit in their hands, hearts beating in unison. The battle was about to begin. Anya, at the edge of the village, turned to her leopards, her eyes meeting theirs in a silent understanding. The wind brought the strong, wild scent of the tigers. They were here. Anya, at the edge of the village, turned to her leopards, her eyes meeting theirs in a silent understanding. The wind brought the strong, wild scent of the tigers. They were here. A deep growl, almost a distant thunder, echoed through the taiga, making the ground vibrate slightly beneath the girl's feet. It was not one, nor 10, but a guttural symphony of 1,200 hungry predators, a living wave of muscle and instinct approaching. The darkness of dawn still clung to the forest, but Anya's sharp eyes already distinguished the first silhouettes moving among the trees, dark and imposing shapes against the pale snow. Her leopards, previously calm, were now on high alert, their bodies low and tense, soft growls in their throats, a promise of protection. Inside the cabins, the silence was almost palpable, broken only by the crackling of the bonfires and the accelerated beats of hearts. Lyra, leaning against the reinforced door of her cabin, felt fear tighten her chest, but the image of Anya, small and courageous, ignited a flame of hope in her soul. She could hear the growls, which were now louder, more urgent, and knew the moment had arrived. Boris, by her side, held a torch, his face grim, but his eyes firm. He looked at his mother, seeking strength, and Lyra nodded, a silent gesture that they would face this together. The first tigers emerged from the forest, their eyes glowing like embers in the dim light. They stopped at a respectful distance from the bonfires, sniffing the air, their instincts divided between overwhelming hunger and natural caution. The smell of smoke and human presence was a warning, but the desperation of empty stomachs was a powerful motivator. They began to move in a semicircle, testing the defenses, looking for a weak point, a place where they could break through the barrier of fire and wood. Anya, observing from her strategic position, felt the pressure. The tigers were many, and their patience was limited. She saw a larger group concentrate near one of the more distant cabins, where the bonfire seemed a little smaller. It was a vulnerable point. With a quick nod, she signaled the leopards to move. They glided through the snow, like ghosts, positioning themselves between the tigers and the cabin, their growls now more audible, a clear warning that they would not pass without a challenge. Lyra, peeking through a crack, saw Anya's leopards moving. A shiver ran down her spine. It was an impressive sight, the small granddaughter and her feline guardians, effacing the wild horde. Pride mingled with apprehension. She knew Anya couldn't fight so many, but the girl was using her intelligence, her presence, to create a psychological barrier. The tigers, confronted by the leopards, hesitated. The presence of other predators, though smaller, was an unexpected factor. Anya seized the moment. She ran to a pile of dry firewood that had been prepared, lighting a bundle of branches with her flint. In seconds, a tall, bright blaze rose, casting light and warmth into the vulnerable area. The smell of burning wood, mixed with the intense glow, made the tigers retreat even further, their growls turning into murmurs of frustration. The entire village felt the change. The tension eased a little, a collective sigh of relief. But Anya knew it was temporary. The tigers would not give up so easily. She looked at the sky, which was now beginning to lighten, revealing the white vastness of the taiga. The real battle was just beginning, and she would need all her cunning, every teaching from her parents to keep the village safe. Lyra, seeing the flame rise, felt a wave of gratitude and admiration for her granddaughter. Anya was the personification of resilience, the little warrior who refused to yield. The village had become a beacon of hope in the heart of the eternal winter, and Anya was its brightest light, guiding them through the imminent darkness. She was the strength, the wisdom, the future. Anya didn't stop. The tigers, though retreating from that specific bonfire, still prowled, their hungry eyes fixed on the cabins. She realized that smoke and fire were barriers, but not a definitive solution. Her parents had taught her about respect for nature and the importance of guiding, not just warding off. With a glance at the leopards, who seemed to understand her every thought, Anya began to move. She didn't run into the forest, but to a point further from the village, where a small rocky outcrop offered a clear view and a narrow path that led away towards a deeper, uninhabited valley. The leopards followed her, their movements graceful and silent in the snow. The girl knew she needed an even greater distraction, something that would make them choose the easier path, away from humans. Lyra, observing from the crack, saw Anya move away, and a chill ran through her body. Fear returned, but was quickly replaced by confidence. Her granddaughter was not reckless. She had a plan. Boris, who was also peeking, murmured, What is she doing, Mother? She's exposing herself too much. Lyra merely shook her head, her eyes fixed on Anya's diminutive silhouette. She is guiding us, son. As the ancients guided the herds away from danger, Anya reached the outcrop. With her flint, she quickly lit a bundle of dry branches, but this time, instead of creating a bonfire, she used them as improvised torches. With one in each hand and the leopards growling beside her, she began to run along the narrow path, throwing the lit torches at regular intervals. The fire and smoke created a luminous trail, an irresistible lure for the tigers, who, confused and hungry, began to follow the easier trail, the smell of smoke, and the promise of an unimpeded path away from the fortified village. The growls grew more distant, the guttural symphony transforming into a faint echo. The entire village felt the change. The noise of the tigers diminished, the pressure on the villagers' hearts eased. Lyra, with tears in her eyes, saw Anya's last torch disappear on the horizon, taking the threat with it. The girl had succeeded. She had diverted the horde, not with violence, but with cunning and courage. The sun finally broke through the clouds, painting the taiga with golden and rosy hues, revealing a scene of peace and relief. Lyra ran out of the cabin, Boris and the other villagers following her, their faces marked by weariness, but illuminated by hope. The immediate threat had passed. The village was saved. When Anya returned hours later, exhausted but victorious, the leopard still following her, the village received her with a reverent silence, which soon transformed into murmurs of gratitude and admiration. Lyra hugged her tightly, her body trembling with emotion. "You are the flame, my granddaughter, the flame that never goes out." Anya, nestled in her grandmother's arms, felt the warmth of love and security. The strength of her lineage, the resilience of her people, lay not only in the wisdom of the elders, but in the unexpected courage that blossomed in the new generation, ensuring survival in a world where only the strongest and most cunning can thrive. The village, united and resilient, had overcome the eternal winter. The village, united and resilient, had overcome the eternal winter. A silence of peace and exhaustion hung over the cabins. The sun, now high, bathed the taiga in a soft glow. The bonfires, once defensive flames, burned with comforting calm. The villagers emerged, steps hesitant, then firm, testing the calm. Faces marked by vigil and fear displayed smiles, tears of relief streaming down. Lyra held Anya tightly in her arms, the smell of smoke and snow mingling with the familiar scent of the cabin. The embrace was an unbreakable bond, a bridge between generations, a silent testament to what they had faced. Anya, nestled on her grandmother's shoulder, felt the warmth and security of Lyra's love. The leopards, exhausted but vigilant, lay at their feet, golden eyes watching the village now free from threat. Boris, his voice choked, approached Lyra. "She saved us all, Mother. She is our hope." Lyra looked up, her tear-filled eyes meeting her son's. "She is more than hope, Boris. She is proof that ancestral wisdom is not lost, but transforms, blossoming in unimaginable ways." The elder stroked Anya's hair, who was breathing peacefully, sleep overcoming her. "Our parents taught us to fight with strength and cunning, but Anya showed a greater strength, that of guiding, diverting, finding a path where there seemed to be none." The villagers gathered with reverence. They saw in Anya the personification of resilience, the promise of life in the harsh winter. The women, with admiration, prepared a warm broth, the aroma of meat and herbs inviting restoration. The men inspected the defenses, not to reinforce them, but to dismantle barriers, opening the village to the vast world, now less threatening. Lyra watched, feeling the weight of responsibility dissipate, replaced by lightness in her heart. The village, tested to its limit, did not break. It strengthened, united by purpose and by the courage of a girl. Yakutia, with its relentless winters and wild beauty, was a place of constant challenges, but also of unwavering strength. Anya awoke to the smell of broth, her eyes opening to her grandmother's loving face. Lyra smiled, offering her a steaming bowl. "Eat, my little warrior, you deserve rest and nourishment." Anya took the bowl, feeling its warmth. She looked at the village, at the people who watched her with affection and respect. There was no more fear in her eyes, only stillness, the certainty of having done her part. The village, now a beacon of hope and unity, celebrated life. The story of Anya and the leopards would be told for generations, remembering that true strength lies in the purity of heart, the cunning of mind, and the indomitable flame that burns within each one. The eternal winter would continue, but the village knew that, with love, wisdom, and courage, they would find a way to prosper, honoring the past and embracing the future with the resilience the tiger demanded. Human connection, family strength, and altruism triumphed over adversity, ensuring that Lyra's lineage and the spirit of her people would endure, strong and unbreakable, under the vast, icy Yakutian sky. Relief, like a warm wave, spread through the village, but for Lyra, it came accompanied by an overwhelming exhaustion that seemed to drain every ounce of her life force. The sun, now a golden promise on the horizon, illuminated the tired faces of her people, but could not dispel the fog settling in her own mind. She had embraced Anya with the strength of 1,000 ancestors, feeling her granddaughter's warmth as a balm for her soul. However, as the villagers began to dismantle defenses and prepare food, Lyra felt her legs falter. The weight of the vigil, the fear, and the responsibility finally caught up to her, bending her aged body. With a deep sigh, Lyra moved away from the bustle, seeking the refuge of her cabin. She needed a moment of quiet, a brief rest for body and spirit. Anya, still sleepy, but with eyes shining with the renewed energy of youth, sat near the fireplace, the leopards nestled at her feet like silent guardians. Lyra watched her granddaughter with a love that transcended time, feeling a pride that warmed her chest. The girl was living proof that the lineage would not be broken, that the courage of her ancestors flowed strong in the new generation. Lyra leaned against the wooden wall, closing her eyes for an instant, allowing exhaustion to overcome her. It was then that the silence, previously comforting, transformed into an omen. A subtle movement, almost imperceptible, caught her attention. Her eyes, heavy with weariness, opened slowly, and what she saw made her heart stop. 3 agile, slender silhouettes, an almost ghostly white against the snow, glided through Anya's bedroom window. Snow leopards. They were not the tigers, but predators even more stealthy, more lethal in their discretion. Lyra tried to scream, tried to stand, but her body, betrayed by exhaustion, collapsed. A silent scream tore through her throat and despair consumed her. It was the end, the tragic outcome of her lineage, not by the claws of the tigers, but by a threat she had not foreseen, could not fight. Her eyes, choked with tears of helplessness, could barely believe what she saw. Anya, the small and fragile granddaughter, was not defenseless. With surprising coolness and movements that defied her age, the girl stood up. There was no fear in her eyes, only an iron determination. Her parents, legendary hunters, had secretly trained her, and now every teaching manifested in a deadly ballet of resilience and strength. Anya dodged, spun, used the leopard's own agility against them. It was not violence, but a dance of containment, of control. She subdued the animals with precision, using pressure points, quick movements that disoriented them, without harming them, but asserting her dominance. Lyra, crawling with difficulty to the window, witnessed the scene with her heart pounding erratically. Anya, the child who seemed vulnerable, transformed into a relentless warrior. In a few minutes, the 3 snow leopards, confused and contained, retreated, leaping back through the window, defeated not by brute force, but by the cunning and technique of a girl. Lyra let out a sob, not of sadness, but of admiration and overwhelming pride. Her granddaughter, her little Anya, was the true strength of her people. The elder realized that the true strength of her lineage resided not only in the struggle of the elders, but in the unexpected flame of courage that burned in the next generation, ensuring survival in a world where only the strongest and most cunning can thrive. Anya, turning and seeing her grandmother, ran into her arms, exhausted but with a victorious smile. Yakutia, with its eternal challenges, had once again revealed the indomitable resilience of its people,